I used to think I was a good judge of character. Back in college, I prided myself on spotting the red flags before things got out of hand, whether it was a manipulative classmate, a toxic relationship, or just someone trying to mooch rides to the grocery store. But looking back, I realize I wasn't nearly as perceptive as I thought. Because in 2014, I let someone into my life, into my home, who might have been the closest I ever came to a murderer. His name was Lucas Wolf. We met the way a lot of loners meet, online. It was a philosophy subreddit of all places, one of those threads that got weirdly introspective, where people dissected ethics, morality, and whether free will even exists. I was 22 at the time, studying criminal psychology at a state college in Colorado. Lucas lived in upstate New York. We hit it off after replying to the same dumb Nietzsche meme. He messaged me later that night. From there, we started talking regularly. Not just Reddit, Steam, Discord, private messages. We played strategy games late into the night, swapped weird music, joked about politics, and argued about whether the world was getting better or worse. He was sharp in a way that didn't feel performative, sarcastic, quick to poke holes in a theory but never mean about it. We laughed about our shared hatred of small talk and affection for cold weather. It wasn't long before I started to think of him as a real friend. He told me he was ex-military, said he'd enlisted at 18, done some quiet contract stuff overseas, places he wouldn't name. Mostly boring, he insisted, but it teaches you who's real. I didn't push. At that point, I didn't need to. I was just grateful to have someone to talk to who didn't make me feel like I had to explain myself every 5 seconds. In the summer of 2015, Lucas messaged me, thinking of driving west. Never seen the Rockies. Got a spare couch? I did. I'd hosted backpackers before, mostly kids from out of state doing road trips. It wasn't unusual. I had a pull-out futon in my living room and a tiny kitchen. Nothing fancy, but it was a place to crash. He showed up in July. The first thing I noticed was the smell. It wasn't just sweat. It was something deeper, like clothes that had been worn for weeks. His beard was overgrown, his hair oily and plastered to his forehead. His boots were caked with dry mud. And when I opened the door to let him in, he didn't smile. Just nodded and walked past me. I offered him the shower, fresh towels, even a travel toothbrush. "I'm good," he said. He never used them. That week was strange in a way I still can't fully articulate. Lucas wasn't bad, not exactly, but something about him didn't add up. He barely acknowledged my roommate. He ate with his hands even when utensils were available. When we visited a mountain town an hour west, he refused to make eye contact with the waitress and insisted we sit where he could watch the door. He claimed it was habit from downrange, but the paranoia didn't seem like habit. It felt lived in. Deep. We hiked, took pictures, even played a few board games at my apartment. He could still be funny, still crack a joke that made me laugh. But his tone had shifted. There was a hardness under everything he said, a bitterness that caught me off guard. One night, we sat outside on the patio, drinking beer. He stared out at the dark skyline and muttered, "This country's gonna eat itself alive, you'll see, no one's ready." I asked what he meant. He didn't answer. He left after 5 days. We hugged, awkwardly. He said, "You're one of the good ones." I wasn't sure what that meant, but I smiled anyway. Over the next year, we messaged less. Lucas went dark sometimes, weeks without contact. When he resurfaced, he'd talk about things like black sites in Africa, or how people disappear easier than you think. I chalked it up to trauma, or maybe just attention-seeking. I still didn't know what was real. Then in 2017, he messaged me out of the blue. "Moved to Oregon. You ever been to Portland?" I hadn't. He invited me to visit. I had PTO and needed a break. Against my better judgment, I booked a ticket. It was a decision I still question. The moment I stepped into his apartment, I knew I'd made a mistake. It was small, 2 rooms, but looked like it hadn't been cleaned in months. The sink was overflowing with dirty dishes. The air stank of cat piss and mold. One corner of the living room had a stack of plastic bins labeled rations, survival gear, and tools. Another wall was covered in newspaper clippings, maps with red string, and post-its scrawled in Sharpie. It looked less like a home and more like the inside of someone's unraveling mind. And then there were the cats, 2 of them. Their fur was patchy, their eyes glassy. One limped. Neither had food. "Jesus, man," I said. "You okay?" "Why wouldn't I be?" he replied. He wasn't joking. The 3 days I stayed there were among the longest of my life. He drank constantly, cheap vodka straight from the bottle. Chain-smoked indoors, barely ate. Some nights, he'd sit on the floor with the lights off, watching old war footage on mute. Other nights he'd rant about government psyops, fluoride in the water, or how the collapse was already happening, just slower than people think. I asked if he'd talked to anyone, therapist, VA, even friends. He laughed. "You still think people like me get help?" On the second day, I found a backpack under his bed. Inside were several loaded magazines, a fixed blade knife, and a handgun. No lock, no safe, just lying there, next to a crumpled blanket and a half-empty bottle of vodka. That night I barely slept. I left on the 3rd morning. Told him I had to catch an early flight. He hugged me again. Tighter this time. "You're the only one who doesn't lie to me," he said. I nodded and left without looking back. Over the next year we barely spoke. Occasionally he'd send a meme or an unprompted rant. Most of the time I ignored it. Then in 2019, my girlfriend and I took a road trip through the Pacific Northwest. She wanted to stop in Portland. Against my better judgment, I messaged Lucas. He was ecstatic. "Come by," he said. "I got a new place, better setup." We met for lunch at a dive bar on the east side. He looked worse, bloated, shaking slightly like he hadn't slept in days. He made me drink. I pretended to. We talked about games, old threads, joked like we used to. It felt almost normal. I should have left it at that. The next day, he picked me up, alone. My girlfriend stayed at the hotel. He said he wanted to show me some of the gear he'd been working on. I don't know why I agreed. His new place was worse than the last. Smaller, darker, dirtier. The blinds were all closed, the air thick with smoke. A rifle leaned against the couch. In the corner, a bin labeled emergency. We sat in silence for 20 minutes while he played a first-person shooter. I scrolled on my phone. The only light came from the TV screen. Then, out of nowhere, he said, "You ever think about how easy it'd be to disappear someone?" I looked at him. "What?" "I mean, if you were smart about it. No paper trail, no motive, just gone." I forced a laugh. "Dude, that's dark." He smiled. "Only if you get caught." Then he turned off the game and stood, walked into the kitchen, came back with 2 beers, sat down and stared at me. "You still think people are mostly good?" I didn't answer. He leaned in. "If this was your last meal, what would you pick?" My heart thudded. I stood slowly. "Think I left something in the car?" He didn't stop me, just nodded. "Don't be long." I walked calmly to the door, closed it behind me, then sprinted. I ran until I hit the main road, flagged down a city bus, sat shaking in the back row until it reached downtown. I didn't stop until I was back in the hotel room where my girlfriend was asleep, headphones in. I never told her what happened. Not then. That night, Lucas called me 12 times, left voicemails. "You okay?" "Something weird happened today." "Let's just go for a drive, clear the air." I blocked him, forever. That was the last time I saw him. I've searched his name since. Nothing. No arrests, no death notice, no social media presence. But sometimes, I check missing persons reports for Portland. I don't know what I'm looking for. A name. A clue. Confirmation of something I'll never fully know. I don't know if Lucas ever killed anyone, but I know I've never met someone more capable of it. And I know this: I will never again ignore the part of me that says run. If you had asked me 10 years ago who my soulmate was, I wouldn't have said a boyfriend or a parent or even a sister. I would have said her, Brinley Knox. That name probably means nothing to you. It shouldn't. She's not famous, not infamous, just another girl from a town no one really leaves. But to me, she was once everything. I met Brinley the second week of sophomore year, Oak Hollow High, in a town that hugged the Kentucky border like a bruise. The kind of place where people talk behind your back but hold the door open for you anyway. Everyone knows everyone, and if they don't know your business, they'll invent it. Brinley wasn't like the others. That much was obvious from the moment she walked into second period algebra. Pale, freckled skin, auburn hair so dark it looked black under fluorescence, and those eyes, icy green, unreadable. She sat next to me, leaned over and said, "You look like someone who hates math as much as I do." It was the start of everything. By November, we were inseparable. She had that effect on people, this gravitational pull. She could talk anyone into anything. I once watched her convince a security guard to unlock the gym after hours because she forgot her backpack. We just wanted to smoke a joint on the bleachers. She called me her sister, said we were twins born into different families, different homes, different trauma. We never used the word trauma back then, but we both knew it hovered in the background. Mine was wrapped in a silence I couldn't break. Hers was wrapped in hints. A too firm grip from her dad when he thought no one was looking. A visible flinch at the sound of raised voices. But Brinley never acted like a victim. She turned pain into rebellion. And I followed, sneaking out through the back window, kissing older guys with scratchy beards and empty eyes, chugging warm beer in old barns with collapsing roofs. We were trying to be adults before we even finished being kids. She laughed harder than anyone I knew. But sometimes, late at night, when the buzz wore off and everything got quiet, I'd catch her staring off like she wasn't even in her own body. "Where do you go when you zone out like that?" I asked once. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Someplace better." It was Brinley's 17th birthday when I met Logan Vance. I didn't like him the moment I saw him. He was too old, mid-20s at least. He had one of those groomed beards and a smug smile that said he'd already decided what kind of person you were. He bought her a necklace that night, silver with a tiny locket. She wore it constantly after that. "He gets me," she'd say. Not like the others. But what Logan got was control. He was the kind of man who smiled while backing you into a corner. Sweet in public, terrifying behind closed doors. It started small, texting constantly, making her share her location, criticizing what she wore. By spring, she was skipping school just to be with him. I hated him. He could sense it too. One night, Brinley called me in tears. "He's drunk," she whispered. "If I don't go to him, I don't know what he'll do." I drove her there. I shouldn't have, but I did. The second I stepped inside that apartment, I felt it. Something wrong. The air itself was heavy, like it carried a secret. He looked at me like I was an insect on his shoe. "You think you're better than me?" he asked calmly. "No," I replied. "But I think you're a coward who hits girls because he's too scared to face himself." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I could break your neck so easily," he said, almost bored. I left. I should have gone to the police. I should have told her mom. But I was 17. We thought danger was something we could outrun. After graduation, I left Oak Hollow for college in Asheville. I needed space. Brinley stayed. She said she had unfinished business. We kept in touch at first. Weekly calls, blurry selfies, the occasional "I miss you" text. But her stories got darker. Logan never really left. He'd get engaged to someone new, then Brinley would sleep with him the week after. She ruined every healthy relationship she tried to build, always circling back to him like a moth to flame. I tried to pull away, little by little, less calls, shorter replies. Then she met Elliot Brammer. He was good, kind, a gentle giant with sad eyes and a job at the hardware store. For a while, I thought maybe she'd finally escape the cycle. Until one night, she got a text. Logan had gotten engaged. Brinley was at my apartment that night, visiting Asheville for the weekend. We were halfway through a bottle of red when her phone buzzed. She stared at the screen for a long time, then stood. I need to go process this. She didn't come back until 3 a.m. When she did, she was giddy, laughing, wild-eyed. I broke into his apartment, she said, like she was announcing she'd won the lottery. What? Smashed everything, cut up his clothes, poured bleach on the bed. I even shattered his TV. I feel amazing. I stared at her, horrified. Brinley, what if they were home? She shrugged. They weren't. Lucky them. I asked if she was going to get caught. Number he won't report it. Not with his little fiancé finding out about the affair. She smiled, proud. That was when I knew she was gone. We barely spoke after that. A few birthday texts, a tagged photo here and there. But I had a job now, a life, a boyfriend who respected me. Then I saw the news. 2018. Emily Hartley, Logan's fiancée, found dead in their apartment. Gunshot wound to the chest. Note by her side. Ruled a suicide. But something felt off. Emily wasn't just another name. I knew people who knew her. Kind, stable, a preschool teacher who volunteered on weekends. Her family pushed for an investigation. By late 2019, Logan was arrested. The note had been typed, faked. His fingerprints were wiped off the gun, but not hers. The bullet trajectory didn't match the supposed angle. He was sentenced to life without parole. When I read the headline, I went numb. I had been in that house, I had sat on that couch. I had watched him size me up like prey. He meant what he said. He could have broken my neck. In early 2023, Brinley messaged me for the first time in years. Hey stranger, I'm in Denver for the week. Want to catch up? Just dinner, promise. No drama. I almost didn't respond, but curiosity is a nasty thing. We met at a quaint Italian restaurant near my apartment. She wore all black, leather and lace. Her hair longer now, her smile tighter. She looked like someone playing the role of herself. We talked about meaningless things, work, travel, music. Then her phone rang. She left it on the table. The screen lit up. Jail call, Logan inmate number 31,982. She went pale, snatched it, mumbled, "Sorry, work thing," and stepped outside. When she came back, I didn't hide my disgust. You're still talking to him? She didn't blink. Every day. Why? Her eyes went cold. Her voice dropped. I'm the only one who knows what really happened, she said. Nobody else knows the full truth. I blocked her that night, on everything. I haven't seen or heard from her since, but sometimes I dream of her, standing in my doorway, smiling, that same hollow, knowing smile, the kind that says, "You'll never be rid of me." I don't have proof, no fingerprints, no confession, but I do have memory. I remember the way she used to say things, like she was daring the world to punish her. I remember the way Logan looked at her, not like a predator, but like a reflection. Two pieces of a jagged, rusted whole. I remember that necklace, the one he gave her. She wore it like armor. She was wearing it the night we had dinner. What if she never let him go? What if he didn't kill Emily alone? What if he didn't kill her at all? What if the one who laughed about break-ins, who knew the layout of his home, who could disappear for hours and reappear glowing with chaos, was the one who pulled the trigger? Maybe that dinner wasn't about catching up. Maybe it was a warning, a reminder that the past never really leaves, that some people don't need a weapon to kill you. They just need to remind you they still exist. And Brinley, she still exists, somewhere out there. with her secrets, her shadows, and that locket still glinting like a quiet, terrible promise. I was 13 the summer everything happened. We lived in a quiet town called Fair Hollow, the kind of place where everyone knew your dad's truck, where the streets got empty by 9 p.m., and the biggest excitement was when the ice cream truck showed up a second time in a day. I was just a kid back then, hanging on to the last summer of innocence, not knowing how fast it would all vanish. My name's Daniel Burke, and my best friend's name was Eli Carter. Eli wasn't just a friend, he was the friend. You know, the kind that sticks to you like glue, the one who knows your secrets before you say them. We lived on the same block since we were 5. Our moms were best friends before we even knew how to tie our shoes. We played football in the cul-de-sac, made homemade go-karts, and once camped out in his backyard during a thunderstorm. That was Eli, loud, wild, fearless, and I was always chasing after him, the quieter one, the thinker. That summer we spent almost every day at Fulton Park, a big open stretch at the edge of Fair Hollow. It had a rusting old playground, a dried-up creek, and a worn-out baseball field nobody really used anymore. We called it the field. It was our space. On the last Friday of July, everything felt normal. Me, Eli, and our other 2 friends, Mason and Grady, met up around 5 p.m. Eli brought a half-deflated soccer ball and a bag of off-brand chips. Same teams? Eli grinned. You always say that when you want to win, Grady laughed, brushing his messy blonde hair from his face. Come on, Eli shrugged, tossing the ball up. Me and Daniel versus you 2. Losers buy Slurpees. It was one of those muggy nights where the sun took forever to set. We played until the air got thick and the sky turned that deep purple-blue shade that meant it was time to go home. One by one, kids started heading out. Mason's mom called him. Then Grady had to leave because his sister was picking him up. That left me and Eli. Let's hang a bit longer, he said, kicking the ball idly. It's past 10, I said, checking my phone. We should head. But Eli wasn't done. Just a little longer. We sat on the swings and talked about dumb stuff. Video games, school rumors, how Mr. Hendricks smelled like pickles and chalk. The park was nearly pitch black except for a flickering lamppost near the entrance. I kept glancing toward the trees at the edge of the field. There was something about how dark it looked beyond them, something that didn't sit right. That's when he showed up. A tall, lanky teenager, probably 16 or 17, wearing all black. Black hoodie, black boots, black gloves, even a black ski mask pushed up onto his forehead. He stepped out from the tree line like he'd always been there. Yo, he said casually. You guys still playing? I immediately stiffened. Eli didn't. He was always too friendly for his own good. Just wrapping up, Eli replied. You from around here? Sort of, the guy said, walking closer. Name's Jaden. I used to live near this park. You guys like soccer? Who doesn't? Eli said. You play? Jaden smiled. Yeah. Got a ball? Eli held up our sad, deflated one. Cool, Jaden said. I've got a better one. And snacks. Want to come hang at my place? Not far. We've got a full net, too. That's when I felt it. That wrong kind of silence. The one your gut notices before your brain does. No thanks, I said, trying to sound polite. It's late. But Eli nudged me. Come on, man. Just for a bit. Dude seems cool. Jaden chuckled. You won't regret it. We got soda, too. Eli looked at me. Come on, Danny. What else are we doing? I paused. Something in my chest tightened. But Eli had that look. The one where you knew you couldn't stop him. He always made his own calls. Fine, I muttered. But just for a bit. We followed Jaden through the trees behind the park. The deeper we went, the quieter it got. No crickets, no wind, nothing. Just the crunch of our shoes on the dirt path. How far is your place? I asked. Just a few more minutes, Jaden said over his shoulder. Eli kept chatting with him. You go to Lincoln High? Jaden nodded. Used to. Got homeschooled now. 10 more minutes passed, then 15. The trees got denser. I couldn't even see the streetlights behind us anymore. Then we saw it. A rundown shack, barely visible through the overgrowth. Half the roof was caved in, windows boarded. A beat-up black van parked outside. "Is this it?" I asked. Jaden nodded. "Yeah, it's quiet. Cops don't bother people here." I stopped walking. "Dude, what?" I whispered to Eli. "This is messed up." "It's fine," he whispered back. "Just 10 minutes. Jaden turned. "Come on in." He opened the door. Inside, it was pitch black. "Lights don't work," he muttered. Eli stepped in. I didn't. Something caught my eye. A faint movement in the boarded-up window beside the door. I stepped back and looked closer. Inside were people, 4 of them, all men, all staring at us. One wore a blood-stained tank top, arms bigger than my dad's. Another wore biker leathers, long hair slicked back. One had a pistol, another held a machete, and they were smiling. "Eli!" I shouted. He turned, half inside the house. "What?" "Run!" I didn't wait. I sprinted. Behind me I heard shouting. A door slam. Footsteps crashing through leaves. I didn't look back. I ran like hell through that forest. Branches tore at my face. My lungs burned. I tripped, fell, scrambled up again. Eventually I saw the edge of the park. Streetlights. Civilization. I made it home in 10 minutes flat, pounded on the front door until my mom opened it. I collapsed into her arms, sobbing. She kept asking, "Where's Eli? Where's Eli?" I couldn't answer. That night my parents called the police. They called Eli's parents. He never came home. The next day the cops took me and Eli's dad into the woods with dogs and flashlights. The shack was empty. The van was gone. No blood, no evidence, like it had never existed. A week later our neighbor's dog, a retired police K9, caught a scent off Eli's shirt. It led them 13 miles outside of town, an old industrial warehouse deep in the woods. Inside they found what they didn't want to find, 23 bodies, including Eli's. I'll spare the details, but the police said it wasn't just a kidnapping. It was organized, a human trafficking ring. Eli was tricked, drugged, and they used his body to hide narcotics before dumping him in a sealed freezer. The warehouse had been abandoned a year ago. It was just being used as a temporary base. The horror didn't stop with the news. The nightmares started. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Eli walking into that shack and never coming out. I blamed myself. Still do. I went through therapy for years. I had survivor's guilt. Couldn't eat. Couldn't sleep. I still hear his voice sometimes. Still see his shoes left on my porch. We held a memorial for Eli at Fulton Park a month later. They planted a tree and put a plaque at its base. In memory of Eli Carter, a beloved friend, forever missed. Sometimes I sit under that tree and just talk to him. I don't tell people this story often, but if you're reading this, I want you to remember. Sometimes the real monsters aren't hiding under your bed. They're wearing friendly smiles, and sometimes you don't realize something's wrong until it's too late. I used to think growing up in Westvale was boring. Nothing ever happened in our quiet little neighborhood. A loop of worn sidewalks, matching mailbox posts, and kids who'd known each other since kindergarten. Back then, my best friend Lily and I used to say we were the pretty girls with nothing to do, which wasn't totally true. We always found trouble when we wanted it. We were the kind of best friends who spent every weekend together. If we weren't crashing sleepovers, we were laying on her trampoline in the backyard, whispering about boys and the future and all the things we thought we knew. And for a while, it really did feel like a safe little world. Until Aiden Monroe moved in. He lived 2 streets over in a corner house that always looked like it had too many shadows. I first met him when Lily and I were walking home from the park, Westvale Green a few blocks down, where we always hung out after school. He was sitting on the swings just watching us. He didn't smile. He didn't wave, just watched. Creepy, Lily said under her breath, tugging my sleeve. I laughed it off, but even then, something about the way he looked at us made my skin crawl. Not in the obvious way some guys did. He wasn't catcalling or being rude, he was just still. Too still. We found out later he was homeschooled, that his mom worked nights, that his dad wasn't around. Kids like that didn't make friends easily, especially in Westvale. Aiden started showing up more, quietly, like a shadow. We'd be walking to 7-Eleven and see him trailing us from across the street, or he'd be sitting alone at the park when we got there. He never asked to join us, not at first, he just existed near us. Lily felt bad for him. He's probably just lonely, she said one Friday when we caught him watching us from his porch. Maybe he wants friends but doesn't know how to ask. I didn't feel the same way, but I didn't say anything. Not yet. Then one afternoon, we were all hanging out in a group, maybe 7 of us, sitting under the giant oak at Westvale Green, and Aiden showed up. He stood at the edge for a while, then finally stepped forward and mumbled, "Can I sit?" Everyone looked at Lily and me. We exchanged a glance. "Sure," I said, instantly regretting it. That weekend, Lily's parents were out of town. We planned a sleepover at her place, just the 2 of us. Snacks, music, TikToks, and gossip. Simple stuff. But Aiden showed up again that afternoon when we were walking back from the gas station. He'd followed us there without saying anything. I caught him in the reflection of the freezer door while I was grabbing a soda. "You girls hanging out tonight?" he asked casually as we were walking home. Lily hesitated. "Yeah, just us." "Can I come?" he asked. "Just for a bit." There was an awkward silence. I opened my mouth to say no, but Lily beat me to it. "Yeah, I guess. For a little while." My stomach sank. Aiden arrived around 6 p.m. He didn't knock. Just walked into the backyard like he'd always belonged. We were on the trampoline laughing, eating chips, half-heartedly lip-syncing to a song. He climbed up without asking. It was weird, but we didn't want to make a scene. He mostly stayed quiet, watching us with that same eerie stillness. "I need to use the bathroom," he finally said, climbing down and heading inside. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Lily frowned. "He's been in there forever." We went inside to check. I can't explain what it was like, walking into Lily's kitchen and seeing what we saw. Aiden stood in front of the microwave. He didn't turn when we walked in, just stared calmly through the glass. Inside was Lily's hamster, Millie, alive, struggling. The microwave was running. Lily screamed and lunged toward it, slamming the door open. I froze, unable to breathe. "What the fuck, Aiden?" she screamed, clutching the hamster's tiny body. It was already gone. He turned slowly like we were the crazy ones. "I wanted to see what would happen," he said flatly. "Get out," I screamed. "Get the fuck out of this house." He didn't argue. He walked past us calmly and left. We should have called the police, we didn't. That night Lily couldn't stop crying. We debated calling her mom. We even tried to text Aiden's mother, no response. Finally, around 2 a.m., we tried to calm ourselves with junk food and an old movie. Then we heard something tap on the window. We froze. Another tap. Then a slow scraping noise. We crept toward the window and peeked through the blinds. Someone stood in the backyard. He wore a white mask, expressionless, and in his hand, dangling by the neck, was Lily's cat, Sasha. "Oh my God," Lily whispered. "It's him. It's him." He held a knife in the other hand. Lily was already dialing 911. I backed away from the window, shaking. "We need help now," she cried into the phone. "He's here. He has my cat. He has a knife." The operator stayed on the line, trying to keep us calm. Outside, the masked figure cocked his head, like he was thinking. Then we heard the distant whine of sirens. Red and blue lights lit up the backyard. The figure dropped the cat, miraculously alive, and bolted into the darkness. By the time the cops arrived, he was gone. We gave statements. showed them the texts we'd sent to his mom. They searched the Monroe house but found nothing. Aiden hadn't been home. 2 days later, we got the news. Both of Aiden's parents had been found dead, stabbed repeatedly in their home. The police asked more questions. Where had he been? What had we seen? But they never found him. Lily and I don't talk about it much now. We both moved away. I went to college in another state. She's in Texas. We still text sometimes, but it's different. We were never the same after that summer. I still wake up in the middle of the night thinking I hear tapping on the window. I still wonder what would have happened if the cops had been just a minute later, or if we hadn't told him to leave after the microwave, or if we'd never let him into our lives at all. Millie didn't deserve what happened to her. Neither did Sasha. Neither did we. Some people say trauma makes you stronger. I think it just makes you quieter. I was 12 when I met Aiden. It was the summer of 2004 in the small sun-baked town of Meadow Ridge, tucked just west of the Kansas border. Nothing exciting ever happened there. The biggest event was the annual Corn Festival, and even that was just an excuse for sweaty adults to get drunk near hay bales. I had moved into my grandma's house temporarily with my mom after her divorce. My dad had gone to Texas with a woman named Carla, and my mom said she needed space to think. That meant my whole world had shrunk to my grandma's creaky house on Orchard Lane and the dead-end street where kids chalked the sidewalks until sunset. That's when I met him. Aiden Monroe lived 2 houses down with his dad, a stern ex-military guy named Rick. No one ever saw Aiden's mom. He told me once that she left when he was 6 and never came back. I didn't ask more after that. Something about the way he said it made me feel like he'd bite back tears if I did. But that summer, God, we were inseparable. We climbed trees, rode our bikes down the cracked pavement until our hands were numb from the rattling, and built forts out of plywood and tarps in the woods behind the cul-de-sac. Aiden was funny, sharp, always coming up with weird stories about the trees whispering secrets or abandoned cabins with ghosts inside. At 12, I thought he was just imaginative. Now, I'm not so sure. He had this habit of watching people, not in a creepy way at first, just observing. He'd fall quiet sometimes, stare at neighbors from across the street, or ask weird questions like, "What do you think it'd feel like to disappear?" Or, "Do you think people are born bad?" Once he caught a rabbit, said it was hurt. I watched him hold it gently in his hands like something sacred. But the next day, I found the rabbit behind our tree fort, dead. Its neck twisted, eyes still open. I never brought it up. By the end of that summer, just as school was about to start again, Aiden told me he was moving. His dad had gotten a job in Idaho, or maybe it was Illinois, something with an I. I cried. He didn't. He hugged me stiffly and said, "Don't forget me." I promised I wouldn't. And then, he was gone. Fast forward 26 years. It was 2029 and I was 38, living in Minneapolis, working in insurance, divorced. Funny how history repeats itself. With a 12-year-old daughter of my own named Emma. One night I was scrolling through Facebook during a bout of insomnia. I was looking at old photos of my middle school and clicked on the people you may know suggestions. And there he was. Aiden Monroe. Older, of course. Sharper jawline. Buzzed hair, a bit of a beard. His profile picture showed him next to a fishing boat smiling, holding up a trout like he'd just won a medal. I stared at the name for a long time, this pit forming in my stomach like I had swallowed a chunk of lead. I hadn't thought of him in years. I clicked Add Friend, and I messaged him. Me. "Hi, Aiden. You probably don't remember me, but we used to hang out when we were kids in Meadow Ridge. I've always wondered how you were. Hope all is well." No reply. A few days passed, and nothing. But I couldn't shake the unease. There was something off. I went through his profile. It was mostly blank. Just the cover photo, his fishing picture, and a birthday post from someone named Gavin from 2 years ago. The rest? Empty. No tagged photos. No family. I messaged my old friend Courtney, the only one I still talk to from back then. Me. Hey, you won't believe who I just found on Facebook. Aiden Monroe. Courtney. Wait, are you serious? Me. Yeah, I messaged him but he didn't respond. She didn't reply for a minute. Then, Courtney. You don't know, do you? Me. Know what? Courtney. He killed his mom. That's why he disappeared. I stared at the screen, not understanding. Courtney. It happened years after he moved. He went missing at 17. Cops said he kidnapped his mother from her apartment, took her into the woods, tied her up, beheaded her. They found her body in the lake, just the torso. Head was buried in a bag near an old shack. Courtney. He was never caught. Been on the run ever since. Changed names, maybe. But yeah, that's why he ghosted everyone. I felt ice flood through my veins. And then that night at 2:16 a.m. I got a message. From Aiden. Aiden. Hey, sorry I didn't see your message until now. How are you? My throat tightened. I stared at the screen. He didn't say anything else. I typed slowly. Me. I'm good. How's your family? How's your mom? He replied almost instantly. Aiden. She's good. We're all good. I blocked him immediately, reported the profile to Facebook. I didn't sleep that night. I kept checking the locks on my doors, watching the street. Every time headlights passed, I ducked behind the curtains. My daughter, Emma, was fast asleep in her room, clutching her old stuffed giraffe. I stood in her doorway for nearly 20 minutes just watching her breathe. The next morning, I called Courtney. She said his mom's dead. He killed her. I whispered into the phone, pacing the kitchen. I told you, she said quietly. He's dangerous. He's hiding in plain sight. But why would he message me now? Courtney paused. Because you're the only one who remembered him kindly. I didn't want to believe it, but deep down, I did. The rabbit, the quiet stares, the way he always wanted to play games that involved trapping something. At 12, it was just odd. As an adult, I recognized it for what it was, unhinged. 2 weeks passed. I tried to move on, deleted Facebook, focused on work, Emma, therapy. I didn't tell Emma about Aiden. She wouldn't understand. Then one night I came home late from a meeting. Emma was with my sister. The house was quiet. I walked into the kitchen and froze. There was a rabbit on the porch, dead. Its neck twisted just like before. I called the police. They found no signs of forced entry, no fingerprints. They chalked it up to neighborhood kids or a fox. But I knew. This was a message. I got security cameras installed, changed all my locks, bought pepper spray, a stun gun. My therapist told me not to catastrophize, but she didn't see that rabbit. A month later, a letter came in the mail. No return address, just my name, printed in blocky, childlike letters. I opened it in the kitchen with trembling fingers. It read, I remember you. You were nice to me. You didn't scream. I wonder if your daughter will too. I threw up in the sink. I moved the next week. Changed my number. New city. New job. Emma had to start over again, but I couldn't risk staying. Not after that letter. Not after everything. Sometimes I lie awake wondering what would have happened if Courtney hadn't warned me. What if I had met up with him? Caught up over coffee? What if I had brought Emma? Would we have just talked? Or would I have ended up like his mother? I still don't know where he is. Maybe he's moved on. Maybe he's found someone else from the past to reconnect with. Someone else who doesn't know. But I do know this. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them. Because not all childhood friends grow up to be harmless. Some grow up to be monsters. I never really believed in the idea that someone could live a double life. Not until I met Mira. We met in high school. I was new in town, awkward, and a little too eager to please. Mira had this magnetic confidence. She wasn't loud or flashy, just effortlessly in control of any room she walked into. We became friends over a shared lab table in chemistry class. She was the first person to invite me to hang out after school. From there, it grew into a 6-year friendship. Through high school and into college, we were inseparable. The kind of friends who finished each other's sentences, shared playlists, and cried on the bathroom floor over boys and finals. When college rolled around, we decided to stick together and dormed our first 2 years. Junior year, we made the leap and got our own place off campus, a modest 3-bedroom apartment on the edge of Willow Ridge, a quiet college town with nothing but overpriced coffee shops and aging Victorian homes. Our third roommate was a girl named Nia. We weren't super close with her, but she was chill, clean, and paid rent on time. That was good enough for us. By that point, Mira and I were like sisters. We had inside jokes, shared food without asking, and even borrowed each other's clothes without caring. But looking back now, I realize how unbalanced it all was. I used to overshare. Everything. My insecurities, my dreams, my relationship problems. Mira always listened, but she rarely opened up herself. Not in the same way. I mistook it for emotional maturity. In hindsight, it was control. March, spring semester. Spring break was coming up. I was planning to drive back home to Charleston. Nia too. Mira said she'd stay an extra day. She wanted to cover a shift at the bookstore she worked at downtown. Quick cash, she told us over frozen pizza the night before. I remember joking, "Don't burn the place down while we're gone." She smirked, "Only your room." We all laughed. The next morning, Nia and I left together. I hugged Mira goodbye. She lingered a second too long, said, "Drive safe, okay?" It wasn't weird, not really. Just Mira being Mira. Attentive, caring. At least that's what I thought. 30 minutes into my drive, I remembered my laptop. That gut-dropping panic hit. I'd been working on a research paper I hadn't backed up anywhere. I pulled over at a gas station, tore through my bags. Nothing. I cursed under my breath. The idea of turning back was exhausting, but I had no choice. I called my mom to let her know I'd be late and turned the car around. Back at the apartment, I used my key to let myself in. I remember thinking it felt weirdly quiet. Still, it was like the air inside hadn't moved since I left. "Mira?" I called out. "I forgot my laptop. I swear I'm the worst." No response. I figured she had stepped out or was sleeping. But her door was wide open, which was odd. Mira always kept her door shut. Not obsessively, but private. I went straight to my room, tore through my bed, my desk, the floor around my nightstand. Nothing. Then something made me turn. Out of the corner of my eye, through Mira's open door, I saw it. My laptop, open on her bed, right beside hers. I stepped into her room slowly. "Hello?" I called again, quieter this time, as if I wasn't sure I wanted an answer. My laptop was signed in. My desktop was open. She must have known my password. But how? Next to it on her laptop, there was a folder open. I clicked, and then time stopped. There were pictures of me. Not selfies, not ones I'd posted online. These were taken secretly. Me sleeping on the couch after parties, me stepping out of the bathroom in a towel, me in my room, undressing, back turned to the door. Blurry but unmistakable. There were dozens, maybe more. I froze. My chest felt tight, like I'd forgotten how to breathe. I clicked deeper. Another folder. Inside were copies of my class schedule, an Excel file titled Notes-R, and another one labeled Routine open parenthesis Weekdays close parenthesis. I backed away, my hands shaking. In a daze, I opened her closet, and there, stuffed behind boxes of old shoes and a yoga mat, I found a small pile of clothes. My clothes. Things I'd lost months ago. Underwear. Tops I thought I'd misplaced. One of my scarves. I backed out. I wanted to scream, cry, vomit. I snatched my laptop, slammed hers shut, grabbed my things, locked my bedroom door behind me, and ran. I didn't call Mira. I didn't know what I would even say. I called my mom, sobbing, incoherent. She thought I'd been in a car accident. When I finally choked out the words, she went quiet. "What the hell is wrong with her?" she whispered. I had no answers. By the time I got home that night, I found that Mira had blocked me on everything. Instagram, Snapchat, even Venmo. Just gone. I never sent a message. What was there to say? I spent the break shaking, nauseous, replaying everything in my head. Every shared secret. Every "I love you, bestie." Every time I changed in our room. Every time I slept beside her. When I got back to the apartment a week and a half later, her room was empty. Gone. No note. No confrontation. Nia was just as blindsided. She hadn't even known Mira moved out. It took me nearly a year to feel normal again. Until one night, at a bar downtown, I ran into her, with two of our old mutual friends. She glanced my way, froze, and looked at the floor. Couldn't meet my eyes. I waited for her to approach, to apologize, to explain. She didn't. She never did. But the worst part? It explained something I'd buried. The first month we moved into the apartment I had this night, I'd gotten hammered at a frat party. Nia and Mira had helped me stumble back to bed. I remember falling onto the mattress, fully dressed, the room spinning. Sometime later, maybe minutes, maybe an hour, I woke up to a noise, a rustling, in my closet. I sat up, disoriented, my head pounding. I remember whispering, "Hello," and seeing something shift in the dark. I was so terrified I ran barefoot to Nia's room, sobbing. She came back with me, turned on the lights, checked the closet. Nothing. Mira slept through the whole thing. We laughed about it the next day. "You were just drunk and dreaming," she'd said. But I knew I hadn't imagined it. Now I know why she didn't come when I screamed. She was in my closet. I think about what else she could have done, what she saw, what I'll never know. I'm careful now, cautious about who I let close. I keep my bedroom door locked at night. I cover my laptop camera. I double-check the closet before I sleep. I live with a dull ache in my gut, a paranoia I can't shake. Because the scariest part about being betrayed isn't what they did. It's realizing you never really knew them at all. I thought I had a best friend, a sister. Instead, I had a shadow, watching me, every day, every night, smiling like nothing was ever wrong. I always believed that knowing someone for a long time meant you truly knew them. That childhood bonds meant something deeper, like some invisible contract where no matter how far apart you drifted, you still had each other's backs. That's what I thought about Mahir. We grew up together in a small, sleepy suburb outside of Bhopal, in a neighborhood where the biggest drama was whose dog pooped on whose lawn. Mahir and I were inseparable from the moment we met in 3rd grade. He was quieter than most, always a bit off, but loyal. Deep down, I think I always knew something wasn't quite right with him. The way he'd zone out sometimes, the way he'd talk about dreams that felt like memories. But I chalked it up to an overactive imagination. After all, who doesn't have quirks? By our early 20s, life had taken us in different directions. I moved to Indore for work, landed a job at a private tech firm, got my own 1-bedroom apartment, and tried to live like an adult. Mahir stayed back working odd jobs and dealing with what he once vaguely called his issues. He never got specific, but I knew he took meds. Antidepressants, sleeping pills, maybe antipsychotics. I never asked. I figured if he wanted to tell me, he would. We hadn't spoken in months when I got the call. It was around 10:45 p.m. on a Thursday. I was watching something on Netflix, half asleep on my couch, when my phone lit up with Mahir's name. I answered immediately, thinking maybe he just wanted to catch up. His voice was shaky. "Bro, can I stay with you for a couple days? Just for a bit. Please." "Of course," I said without hesitation. "You okay?" A long pause. Not really. Had a fight with my roommate. It got bad. I didn't press. I figured he'd open up once he got here. He arrived an hour later in an old beat-up auto that smelled like petrol. He had just a backpack and a crumpled hoodie on. No eye contact, no smile. Just walked in, dropped his bag in the corner, and collapsed onto the couch. Want some water? I offered. He nodded but didn't look at me. Thanks. We didn't talk much that night. I tried asking what happened with his roommate, but he just muttered, "Don't want to talk about it," and kept staring at the wall. He looked exhausted. His eyes were bloodshot, and there were deep, dark circles underneath them. Still, I didn't want to push. I'd had bad days too. Maybe this was one of his. Crash on the couch, I said. Blankets in the cupboard. Thanks, Rishi, he said, and that was that. The next morning I left early for work. I came home around 7 p.m. to find Mahir still on the couch, controller in hand, playing Call of Duty on my Xbox. Empty chips packets and a half-empty bottle of cola lay beside him. You good? I asked, tossing my bag on the table. He shrugged. Yeah, just trying to keep my mind off things. Again, no elaboration. That night, I went to bed around 1 a.m. I remember it vividly because I had just finished a call with my sister. I took a sip from the water bottle by my bed and noticed it was empty. Reluctantly, I got up to head to the kitchen. As I passed the living room, I slowed. The couch was empty. At first, I thought maybe he was using the bathroom, but the light was off. Kitchen? Also dark. I didn't call out. Didn't want to startle him if he was sleepwalking or something. When I returned to my room, I left the door cracked open. That's when I heard it. A clicking sound. Rhythmic. Fast. Like someone tapping a pen repeatedly. But more. Organic. Wet. Almost. I sat up straight and turned toward the corner of my room. That's when I saw him. Mahir. Standing. In the corner. His arms limp at his sides, body stiff like a mannequin. His head was tilted slightly and his mouth was moving unnaturally fast, making that clicking sound. His eyes were open but distant, like he was looking through me. I froze. Mahir? I whispered, barely breathing. He didn't respond. Mahir, what the hell are you doing? I said louder, grabbing my pillow and chucking it at him. The pillow hit his chest and fell to the floor. He blinked rapidly, then turned and marched out of the room in a stiff, robotic way. I followed him out. He collapsed onto the couch without saying a word, blanket still balled up beside him. The next morning I brought it up as casually as I could. Hey, weird question. Do you sleepwalk? He looked at me with surprise. Not that I know of. Why? I told him he was standing in my room last night. No way. He laughed nervously. Are you serious? Dead serious. You were making weird noises. He rubbed his forehead. Shit, that's new. I didn't push it. I figured maybe the stress, the meds, the fight, maybe it all caught up to him. Still, I made a mental note to lock my bedroom door that night. I didn't. That second night, something woke me again. No thirst, no noise. Just this cold, sinking feeling in my stomach. I sat up and looked toward the living room. The couch was empty. Again. Mahir? I called out. No response. I checked the bathroom. Empty. Kitchen. Nothing. I stood in the hallway, confused and on edge. Then I heard it. Muffled speaking. Coming from my closet. I turned toward the half-closed door. The sliver of darkness between the panels seemed too deep, like it led somewhere else. I crept closer. Mahir, I called again. Then I saw it. His face, half hidden in the dark, his eyes wide open, hands over his mouth. He was crouched inside the closet like an animal, whispering to himself. I gasped and took a step back. What are you doing? He didn't answer. I yanked the door open. Come out of there, man. What the hell is wrong with... That's when I saw it. A knife. clutched in his right hand, a large one, from my own kitchen. I backed away, heart racing. "Mahir, drop it." He didn't move. I ran, slammed the bathroom door shut and locked it, my breath ragged. I didn't sleep that night, just waited, listening, praying. Eventually I heard the couch creak. I waited 15 minutes, then made a dash to my room and locked that door too. The next morning, I didn't even pretend to act normal. "You need to go," I told him flat out. He blinked, groggy, like he didn't understand. "You were in my closet with a knife last night," I said. "You were whispering to yourself. Do you even remember that?" His face paled. "No, I don't. I swear I didn't yell, didn't accuse. I just stood there until he packed up and left. That afternoon I messaged his old roommate. We weren't close, but I needed answers. He sent me 3 paragraphs. Mahir came into my room last week, holding a knife. Just stood there at the foot of my bed. I thought I was being robbed, man. Tackled him and threw the knife away. He said he was sleepwalking. I didn't buy it. That's why I kicked him out." I stared at the message for a long time. I haven't seen Mahir since that day. He's still active on Instagram, occasionally liking my posts, but I never engage. I still lie awake some nights, wondering if he was really sleepwalking, or if that was just his excuse. Because now that I think about it, the knife wasn't from the drawer. It was from the top shelf of my cabinet, the one that even I have to climb to reach. And he never asked me where I kept it. I used to think the scariest things in life wore masks. Strangers and shadows, break-ins, stories that happened to other people. But I was wrong. Sometimes horror wears a familiar face. Mine had freckles, wore a hoodie too often, always carried a scratched-up vape. His name was Devin. We met during the first semester of college in a painfully boring psychology class. He sat 2 seats away from me and cracked a joke about our professor's lisp that made me laugh when I really shouldn't have. That stupid joke became our friendship's origin story. At first, we were just study partners. We'd pass each other half answers during tests, trade Quizlet links, and help one another with boring assignments. He always had a way of making shitty situations seem tolerable. He'd nudge me in class and whisper ridiculous things to make me laugh. Over time, I started trusting him with more than homework. I told him about my weird childhood, my strained relationship with my dad, and how I sometimes struggled with loneliness even when surrounded by people. He told me about his parents' divorce, about how he moved schools 3 times in high school, and how he didn't really have any close friends growing up. That made 2 of us. Eventually, we started hanging out outside of class. Movie nights, midnight 7-Eleven runs, hours playing stupid horror games that freaked me out more than I ever admitted. There were times I'd wake up to texts like, "You still awake? Can't sleep. Let's go for a drive." And I'd go. Every time. Because Devin was the first person who made me feel seen. Like I wasn't just background noise in everyone else's life. Looking back, I think he knew that. It was a Friday night in late April when everything changed. I remember because finals were 2 weeks away, and I had every intention of staying in. But Devin texted me around 7 p.m. "Let's hit that new bar near Midtown. First round's on me." I hesitated. I wasn't in the mood. But he guilted me into it. "You owe me for copying your stats notes, dude." He wasn't wrong. So I picked him up around 8:30. The bar was one of those industrial-style places that tries too hard. Exposed brick, Edison bulbs, overpriced cocktails. I figured we'd each have a drink, maybe some fries, and call it a night. Devin had other plans. By the time I'd finished my first whiskey ginger, he was on his 3rd shot of Fireball. Then came vodka cranberries, then tequila. He was spiraling. Fast. He started approaching random women, slurring his words, saying creepy stuff that made me cringe so hard I felt it in my spine. I remember him grabbing one girl's hand and saying, "You've got murder eyes. I like that." She yanked her hand away like she'd touched a hot stove. I had to keep apologizing. Sorry, he's just drunk. I promise he's not dangerous or anything, I said, trying to laugh it off. But the women weren't laughing. Neither was I. By 11 o'clock, I'd had enough. I dragged him out of the bar, practically throwing his arm over my shoulder. You're done, I said. He mumbled something I couldn't make out and nearly dropped his phone on the sidewalk. I caught it, shoved it in my jacket pocket, and helped him into the passenger seat of my car. Where do you live again? I asked. He told me, a small, slightly run-down apartment complex just off Kenner Street, maybe 10 minutes from the bar. I'd never been inside before. His apartment was a mess. Takeout boxes, crushed Red Bull cans, a blanket on the couch that looked like it hadn't been washed in a year. But the creepiest part was how quiet it felt, like the air itself was holding its breath. I guided Devin inside, laid him out on the couch, and that was it. He passed out immediately, dropped his phone on the carpet. I should have left then. But I didn't. Here's where it gets dark. I picked up his phone. It was still unlocked. A small part of me was just being nosy, but there was something else. An itch I'd been feeling for a while. Devin never talked about work, never mentioned a job. Yet he always had cash for weed, drinks, games. So yeah, I opened the camera roll. There were hundreds of photos, memes, screenshots, pictures of his cat. But then I saw a folder titled simply, Girls. I expected nudes, maybe stolen OnlyFans pics. What I found instead was, God, they were real women. Young, crying, tied to beds with scarves or ropes. One photo had a girl gagged with duct tape. Her mascara had run down her cheeks. I stared at them for minutes, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. Then I noticed something. The bedspread. It was navy blue, with white stripes. The same as the one in the bedroom I'd walked past on my way in. I needed proof. I sent 2 of the photos to myself, deleted the texts from his phone, and gently placed it back on the carpet where he'd dropped it. I left without saying a word. The next morning, Devin texted me. I know you were in my room. We need to talk. If you saw any pics, it was role play, that's all. I didn't respond. How did he know I'd seen the pictures? Had he woken up and seen the door slightly open? Did his phone alert him the images were sent out? I didn't sleep much that night. Around 2:30 a.m., my doorbell rang. Over and over. I counted more than 20 presses. I didn't answer. Then the text started. Let me in. We need to talk, now. Then came the rocks. I heard them tap against my window. Then a louder knock. Come outside, bro, don't make this weirder than it needs to be. His voice. I turned off my bedroom light and crouched behind my bed. My hands were shaking. My phone buzzed again. Why'd you go through my phone? Don't make me come in. That's when I heard him trying to open my window. I finally snapped and called him. I was shaking but furious. Devin, if you don't leave right now, I'm calling the police, I growled. I'm not kidding. Go home. He paused, then hung up. I didn't hear from him again. Not that night. But I still have those photos. And I still don't know what to do. It's been 4 days. Devin hasn't texted or called. But I can't shake the feeling that he's waiting for me to do something. Part of me wants to go to the police. But then what? What if they don't believe me? What if he really was doing some weird consensual BDSM stuff and the girls were into it, even if they didn't look like it? And then there's the other possibility. What if those girls were not willing? What if he's hurt people? What if he's planning to hurt me? Because here's the thing. I've seen Devin at his worst. He can get manipulative, scary. He knows where I live. He knows my class schedule. He knows my family lives out of state. I've started sleeping with a bat by my bed. I lock every window. I've stopped going out after dark. I even switched up my route to campus. Every time my phone buzzes, I flinch. Every time I hear footsteps behind me, I panic. I trusted this guy. He knew everything about me, my insecurities, my secrets, the way my voice shakes when I'm scared. And now? Now I'm stuck in this silent standoff, waiting, watching, terrified that the face I once called best friend is going to become the last thing I